It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Well, good day and welcome to the program. It is Countywide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into the studio today Tony Camacho and Jennifer Payne, and they are with Victim Services Division of the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. And what they do very much described in the name of that service, Victim Services Division. Tony, you help folks. First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in, Jennifer, as well. I want to get right to it. We've been chatting here prior to the program, and so much good information is going to come out today. So for our viewers and listeners, we're going to talk about if you are a crime victim, you or someone you love has become a victim of a crime, what happens? We hear about the criminals and what happens to them, and that's in our news, and we seem to kind of cover it that way. But what happens to the victims? What options do they have, and how much will they have to kind of navigate the rest of it alone? And they're not alone because of what you folks do. Let's talk about first, if I can just get kind of a quick definition of your job, Tony, and what the Victim Services Division is.
Absolutely. I first thank you for having us on your show. And our division falls under the County Attorney's Office, and what we do is provide services for victims of crime. So if you're a victim of a crime, we give you all your rights as a victim. Statutorily, we're required to give notification of what victims have rights for with regards to hearings, and with the charges that are being brought up. And
we think about this. Let's say someone, just for an example, has been the victim of a burglary and a bunch of property was stolen. Someone gets arrested, and that'll begin, I guess, Jennifer, we think about the court process, say, that perpetrator will start to go, through that and say it's going to end up in a trial. At what point does your department, what you do, where along that do you become involved with the victim?
We become involved immediately within the first 24 hours.
Really?
Yes, we assist with the initial appearance. Individuals as victims have the right to have input to the court on release conditions and bond at that very first hearing. And sometimes, in the case of burglary, personal safety may not be as much of an issue, but in other types of crimes like domestic violence, personal safety for the victim is critical.
Right.
So their input can be very important at that first stage, early on. We also like to reach out to them immediately so they know they're not alone and they understand what kind of services are going to be available to them.
Do you find that maybe too many people, I get the impression, but you're on the insides. Do you get the impression that not enough people kind of understand that your division is there and what you do? Tell us about April, first of all. April's National...
Okay. National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 22nd through the 28th.
Okay.
And this is a nationwide, event to honor crime victims and just honor the nation's progress over the last 40 years. And so each community is doing their own activities to raise awareness and get information out to the public so they do know that we exist, so that we can lessen trauma for crime victims.
And that goes back to my question. Do you find that too many people, when you introduce yourselves to them, say, oh, I didn't even know someone would be here? Do you find that to be the case?
Yes, and they're lucky not to have to know, as far as maybe they haven't been a crime victim.
Right.
So,
right.
But it is good for the general public to understand what we do and that we exist, because we just think that the more awareness there is, the more help we'll be able to extend to people when they need it. So.
Now, Tony, this can include, from what Jennifer's described, the initial involvement of you folks with victims, including trial, and kind of how far down the line then do you go? Absolutely.
Beginning with the charges, we take them through what's called early disposition court first. We have 2 advocates assigned to that actually get input from the victims with regards to what the charges are, what's oncoming, whether there's a plea agreement being offered or so forth. So any restitution that may be claimed as a result of the defendant's conduct. So it starts from there, and then if it doesn't get offered a plea at that point, then it gets set for, it gets assigned to a trial division, so to speak. So we have advocates that take that case from there then on and proceed, whether they go to trial or they end up taking a plea.
And just helping people understand.
Understanding judicial
Now
proceedings.
You don't provide legal representation for victims.
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay, it's more of an
advocate. We advocate for their rights as victims of crimes.
Right. You mentioned plea agreements, and I know a lot of times that's where victims can sometimes, just through the system and how things work, start to feel, kind of tamped down some. That is what happens very often in cases, and especially if it's, as Jennifer, you alluded to earlier, a violent crime or something like that. Do you help folks understand why a plea agreement might be needed? And I know every case is different, so I don't want to point to any one, but sometimes you think, well, I want this guy to go on the most serious charge that he can. When you're the victim, that's a natural feeling, I would think. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's the reality of the court system. Absolutely
correct. And that's why we, as advocates, we convey their thoughts to the assigned prosecutor of the case. And statutorily, the assigned prosecutor, on request by the victims, they have the obligation to talk to the victims with regards to what the plea agreement may be with the case that they're involved with.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And they do give input on the plea agreement. That's one of their rights. And so there's that time in between before it's offered to the defendant where they can have some dialogue with the prosecutor, and there can be modifications made, and they also can come to understand that this is a guaranteed conviction.
Right.
And that's somewhat comforting.
Right. Right. And that's usually what a plea agreement works out to, isn't it?
Yes.
This will happen for sure versus, well, maybe this.
Yeah, and then they may not get drugged through a trial, and
I want to get into a whole piece on that, because let's talk about that. That seems to be maybe, certainly we've heard stories where, especially maybe if kids are involved or young people, but anyone really becomes exposed to all of that. Media gets involved, the courtroom, testifying in front of, I can't imagine how terrifying that could be for a lot of folks. So let's talk a little bit about that. Do you help prepare, or if that's the right word, but do you help the victims through that piece of it? Now the lawyers are going to be involved, and it's going to become something else. Do you continue along? If that's the case, they have to testify, say?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
We are there with them every step of the way. We help them prepare, know what to expect. In felony cases, sometimes an advocate will take a victim to see another trial or portions of it so they can experience it a little bit before they have to go through the trial that they're involved with.
Okay.
So,
do you get cases where a victim, just out of either fear or anxiety or apprehension about having to testify or even face the accused in court? I know that can be a big issue. A lot of different things can play into this. Do you ever get to a point where a victim may say, I'd like to drop the whole thing rather than have to go through that? And how do you handle something like that?
Of course, yes. Especially in domestic violence cases,
sure, right.
There's a very high recantation rate, and because people are connected, they may very well and often are afraid of the defendant,
right.
and there's no rational, comfort for them, relief from that, and they experience a lot of intimidation.
You bet.
So that definitely does happen, and there are ways around that for the prosecutors. There are they call it forfeiture by wrongdoing in domestic violence cases. If that defendant is intimidating that witness, then they lose their right to be confronted by their accuser. And so evidence can be brought in without that witness.
But in, say, a domestic violence case, sometimes just having the guy, it could be the gal too, but more commonly the guy just sitting in the same room.
Yes.
Definitely. Not doing anything
That's
overt
right.
can be intimidating, and we hear we hear about the recantation quite a bit, and as often as not, it sounds like, if I understand what you're saying, that it's not, well, it didn't happen the way I described. It's that I just can't go through and have to say that again and go through this.
Yes, and I think the victim advocacy, the support they receive from that, enables more victims to face that fear. They're not alone then in the criminal justice system, and so that is a large part of what we do, is is stand with them.
Right.
And help their voice be heard.
Tony, literally stand with them. You'll be in the courtroom with them.
Yes, literally be with them and empower them to say that you have rights as a victim. So, you know, the courtroom setting could be intimidating for somebody that's not familiar with the case.
Anybody.
Or
you bet.
How it goes. So, I mean, that's what we're there for. We take them through from the start of the charges all the way through the end.
Okay. We'll talk more. Our guests, we're going long because I'm fascinated by this, and what a tremendous service, and perhaps even underused. We want to have everybody understand the Victim Services Division of the Yavapai County Attorney's Office, a commemoration nationally this month for that purpose. Our guest, Jennifer Payne, Tony Camacho, and we'll be back right after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
Contreras with the Cottonwood Fire Department. The major threat of human-caused fires are from burning debris that get out of control or improperly extinguished or unattended campfires. Remember that fireworks have no place on our wild lands. Become part of the solution. Learn more about proper fire safety by contacting the local fire department.
Care Bear Childcare has the right childcare for your family because families today have so many needs. They have great hours, 5:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., and they're open on Saturdays. Care Bears features infant and toddler programs and also have preschool, before and after school care with transportation to most schools, and they even provide all the meals. Care Bear Childcare Center, behind the House of Ruth on North 12th Street, Cottonwood. Call 634-9613. A DES contract provider.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the program. Again, it's countywide today from the Victim Services Division with Yavapai County, Tony Camacho and Jennifer Payne, Victim Services. That is what they do, and some good conversation about something that you guys would probably like to be less and less busy, because it means there's fewer crime victims in our county. But for now, that's not the case, or at least you are there to help folks who do become victims of crime. One other thing I had about the testimony and the courtroom and all of those kinds of anxious things that victims sometimes are subjected to. Are victims compelled to testify in a case? Say they're one of several. Again, our burglary scenario, and 6 houses and they say, well, I'll let my 5 neighbors testify. You don't need me. I don't want to. Can they become compelled? Do they have to testify?
If they're subpoenaed as a witness, then they are compelled to testify.
Ordered by the court.
Mm-hmm. Then they're a witness
to do so.
as well as a victim.
Okay.
And they still have their victim's rights.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is how much can a victim determine the course of the criminal prosecution of an accused? Tony, that's what I'm trying to get at. How much, we've talked about how the victims are consulted. But at what point do they say, well, I'm sorry, you were the victim, we can't just drop this. This crime is either too serious or whatever the cases may be. So you, as a victim, you can steer the ship to a certain point, but at some point it's out of your hands.
Absolutely.
Is what it sounds like to me.
And part of our job as advocates is to ease the minds of the victims. So we convey their thoughts to the assigned prosecutor of the case. And the assigned prosecutor of the case would be the ones to let us know, I really need your victim to testify, or I need your victim present there just to show their presence in court, with regards to the hearings. So, so to speak, the prosecutor is really the driver of the case with regards to how they proceed with court hearings.
You help prosecutors understand victims' feelings, maybe especially from an emotional level. You also help victims understand the desire and need of prosecutors to have a successful outcome.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, Jennifer, the restitution program.
The restitution program, I'm going to turn over to Tony
Okay.
because that's his main
Okay.
duty.
Okay.
Yeah, restitution is ordered at the time of sentencing, and it's any claims that is submitted by the victims with regards to the defendant's conduct. So a person of burglary, they can submit their claims. We send out what's called a financial loss statement to each victim, and they fill out what their losses are with regards to the defendant's crime that they committed against the victims.
Okay.
The court orders monthly payments at the time of sentencing, and they make their defendants are making payments to the clerk of the court, and then the clerk of the court would mail the checks out to the victims, applicable. So
now, when we say restitution, I think of that in terms of I stole your car and wrecked it. I'm going to pay for that car in one form or another.
absolutely.
Do we mean punitive compensation? Where, well, there was the emotional stress, there was
Pain and
No,
suffering.
Pain and
restitution
suffering?
doesn't include pain and
Okay.
suffering. That's more a civil
okay,
matter.
that's what I was familiar with. And
Let's say that somebody stole your vehicle.
Yeah.
And your vehicle was damaged, so you turned that vehicle into a shop to get the windshield repaired
Sure.
or whatever damages in. Then you submit to us your claim with regards to what your loss is
Okay.
out of pocket.
Okay.
The insurance company entailed, if they covered some of those losses, they automatically become a legal entity victim as a result of the claim that was submitted through their agency.
Gotcha.
So
Does this become, and here again, I'm sure every case is going to be different, but this will be part of then that'll follow the restitution piece, will follow the criminal proceedings, and say the judge that's presiding over the criminal case will decide the restitution piece?
absolutely. The
Okay.
judge is the one that orders that at the time of sentencing, whatever we submit with regards to the victim's claims, out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay. Okay. And then that's where we hear if there's anything further that's going to get kicked over to the civil side.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. Is this kind of a new? I mean, we've heard restitution
No,
forever.
restitution is been ongoing.
Sure.
I mean, but if the victims submit a claim, then that's when the judge orders it. And most times, the victims are too, traumatized with the
Right.
crime, so to speak. So
Right.
they don't really submit it right at the time. So as long as the court has jurisdiction over that case, whether they're on probation or in jail, prison, the court can order restitution in the felony side anyway, with regards to as long as the court has jurisdiction over that case.
Okay. 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 We hear about that, and sometimes they're fairly small. I don't know if restitution is really considered a reward. I guess it's not. It's restitution. It's payback for a loss. But for example, there was that burglary in the Sedona area last year where there were literally tens of thousands, hundreds, I think, thousands of dollars of items taken, and you start talking restitution on that. A lot of it was recovered. But when you start getting into those kinds of things, it seems like that's going to become a very bulky piece of the criminal trial when you're talking that kind of money, or maybe the dollar amount doesn't matter. I don't know.
Well, the dollar amount, if anything, it makes the victim whole with regards to the court understanding that they did have a loss.
Right.
So, in most cases, victims are re-victimized again because defendants are not making payments for restitution.
Yeah.
Unlike Maricopa County, they have a restitution court that they hold these defendants accountable. Yavapai County, I think we're still proceeding towards that, but we're not there yet, so we're hoping.
Okay. As that develops, we'll talk to you again. We need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about different kinds of ways maybe that folks listening today may become involved, if there's a way they can help out or find out more in our final segment when we come back. Tony Camacho, Jennifer Payne, Victim Services Division, Yavapai County Attorney's Office, back to Countywide after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100. Or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
About the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Care Bear Childcare has the right childcare for your family because families today have so many needs. They have great hours, 5:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., and they're open on Saturdays. Care Bears features infant and toddler programs and also have preschool, before and after school care with transportation to most schools, and they even provide all the meals. Care Bear Childcare Center, behind the House of Ruth on North 12th Street, Cottonwood. Call 634-9613, a DES contract provider.
Hi, this is Fire Marshal Rick Contreras with the Cottonwood Fire Department. Do you have adequate defensible space around your home? Fire safety begins by cutting all weeds, brush, and dried vegetation around your property. Proper clearance of 30 to 50 feet dramatically increases your chances of your home surviving a fire. Create a clean zone by removing all flammable vegetation around your property. For more information, contact the Cottonwood Fire Department.
Welcome back to the program again, countywide. Brad Miller with you, Tony Camacho and Jennifer Payne, kind of wrapping it up today. I've still got 200 questions I want to ask you, but that'll wait for another time. Tony, we talked about restitution there a moment ago. Compensation. There's an obvious difference, but how does this work within your department?
There is a difference, and the difference is that victim compensation takes expenses from the victim's losses with certain rules that apply, and we have a victim compensation coordinator, Rita Trainer, in our office. And part of victim compensation covers medical expenses, mental health counseling expenses, funeral expenses, lost wages at a minimum wage, crime scene cleanup expense. And there are rules that, you start from filling out an application, and it takes lost wages from victims that maybe restitution can't order. They get that money from this program, and rather than wait for the court to order the defendant to make monthly payments, victim comp picks up that expense.
And it sounds like can start much sooner.
It does, and they do need to apply.
Sure,
so,
right. Everything's going to have some. There's always going to be some paperwork.
Yes.
But, I mean, just one more kind of service that I'm just willing to bet a lot of our listeners and viewers today just are unaware of. That if they're a victim of a crime, big or small in Yavapai County, there's a lot of assistance that they're going to find from your department. Yes. Jennifer, we're out of time, but there's something coming up on Friday that I think you wanted to tell us about.
We'll be at the Take Back the Night event for Prescott College at Granite Creek Park from 5 to 8 p.m. If people have questions or they want information, we'll be there doing some outreach.
And that's Friday, April 6th. Our show will replay after that, so we'll say April 6th.
Okay. And then we have an exhibit at the County Attorney's Office in Prescott, 255 East Gurley Street. There's information there, and at both courts, in Prescott Superior Court and Camp Verde Superior Court.
And another great way to find out more is at the county's website at co.yavapai.az.us/attorney. You'll find out more information about the Victim Services Division. Tony Camacho, Jennifer Payne, our guest today. It's Countywide. We'll see you next time.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.